When you think of Ohio, you probably think of corn, which honestly isn't too far off.
Guess what Ohio's #1 industry is? It's farming. But when we talk about farming as an industry, we tend to call it agriculture.
I always say agriculture is everybody's business. From our state's 76,000 farms that produce over 200 diverse crops to the state's more than 1,000 agricultural processing plants.
Ohio agriculture is vast. It's in all 88 counties. It's across our entire state. It adds up to over $100 billion of contribution to our state's economy annually.
As of now, half of Ohio's land is dedicated to agriculture. This land is dedicated not only to growing Ohio's most prominent cash crops like soybeans and corn, but 200 other crops like tomatoes, bell peppers, pumpkins, and squash.
Agricultural processing plants. We are grateful to be a state that has strong agricultural roots.
Now, there's no question that we rely on this industry, but the fact of the matter is, the roots that we have in it are reaping more than just crops.
In August of 2014, this tainted water reached Toledo, Ohio, causing the city to shut off its supply of water to 500,000 residents.
The Great Lakes in general hold about 1/5 of the world's surface fresh water. It's one of the largest reservoirs of fresh water in the world.
What's become the new normal is severe toxic algae outbreaks in western Lake Erie.
Harmful algal blooms, or HABs, have returned to western Lake Erie.
As the effects of the climate crisis become increasingly obvious, farming practices have raised both environmental and ethical concerns. Concerns about our wildlife, their habitats, and our day-to-day lives. From biodiversity loss, to deforestation, to the pollution of our air, soil, and yes, our water. The 2014 water crisis was a result of climate change many people did not expect. Scientists, however, have been tracking the increase of toxic algal blooms well before 2014.
Cyanobacteria are bacteria which conduct photosynthesis just the same way that plants do. They take carbon dioxide out of the air and they make biomass from that carbon dioxide, and they use light energy to do it. So they basically are the evolutionary ancestor to modern chloroplasts. So if you look at a plant cell and you see it's full of these green things that are doing the photosynthesis, those are actually evolutionary descendants of cyanobacteria. And cyanobacteria are found everywhere on Earth there's life, because they're very adaptable photosynthetic organisms. A lot of them are absolutely essential for how the ocean works, and they do a lot of the good photosynthesis in the ocean.
Although cyanobacteria are an integral part of ecosystems all over the world, as I'm sure we all know by now, too much of a good thing can be bad.
Just like when you talk about bacteria, there are a handful of bacteria which cause problems, cause disease, whatever. Cyanobacteria are a very broad group of organisms, and only a few of them actually cause environmental problems. If given too many nutrients, they'll grow to massive amounts in a water body, especially fresh water. And many of these cyanobacteria produce toxic substances which are harmful to fish, they're harmful to livestock, and they can cause disease.
These toxins, also known as cyanotoxins, can come in different forms, but the most common one are microcystins. Microcystins can be harmful to humans, the environment, and also have an economic cost. Humans can get sick by eating contaminated wildlife like shellfish, and it could also cause vomiting, nausea, and even pneumonia. When it comes to wildlife, if these harmful algal blooms are too dense, they can prevent sunlight from penetrating the surface of the water, causing other photosynthesizers to die off. It can also clog the gills of other animals like fish. Now, once the harmful algal blooms finally die off, the cyanobacteria's decaying process will cause the waters to become anoxic, meaning that the water will become devoid of oxygen, killing even more wildlife. And when it comes to the economic costs of harmful algal blooms, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration found that about $82 million in economic losses were tied to seafood, restaurant, and tourism industries each year.
And so, really, it's an economic issue. Well, you know, the city of Toledo, year over year, it's up to $70 million. That's a costly loss.
Fortunately now, 5 years after the Toledo water crisis, we have invested so much money into our Collins Park water treatment plant that we can take water that looks like this. By the time it gets to your faucet, it really is among the best drinking water that you can get anywhere in North America. But it is a shame that the ratepayers of Northwest Ohio have had to reach into their pocket for the $500 million over the last couple of years needed to turn this into world-class drinking water.
Well, we know the cost of these harmful algal blooms, and we know the cause, cyanobacteria. But are cyanobacteria really the ones to blame?
The big thing is climate change drives cyanobacterial proliferation, because cyanobacteria like warmer temperatures typically. So they're getting more common, they're getting more intense, and climate change is driving.
Every scientific study of this problem has reached an absolute unanimous consensus that this is a problem caused primarily by agricultural runoff and agricultural interests.
Farms play a big part in the exacerbation of climate change. Many farming practices lead to the increase of greenhouse gases, like nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, and methane. They're called greenhouse gases because when released, they trap the heat of the sun in the Earth's atmosphere, creating a warming effect, similar to that of greenhouses. However, if too many of these gases are released all at once, it can cause the Earth to warm rapidly, leading to disastrous consequences on our environment.
Seeing the inside of a factory farm, in particular a swine farm, I never was able to tour the facility because they do keep it very strictly locked down to just their employees. And definitely just stepping foot on the property, especially if they have a lagoon type waste system, which means that they are taking the waste from these hogs and putting them in these giant concrete vats which contain all the manure and feces. There's no way to mask the smell, and you definitely know what is in those lagoons. They're pretty gross.
Bacteria in the lagoons break down the waste. When they get too full, hog farmers siphon the waste to a massive sprinkler and spray nearby crop fields with it. Spraying in lagoons have air quality risks. When bacteria breaks the waste down, it releases hundreds of compounds like methane, carbon dioxide, ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, and dusts into the air. These can cause asthma, respiratory diseases, headaches, and nausea, among other conditions.
A major driver is our nutrients that are coming off the landscape. Typically around here, it's nutrients coming from agriculture. So phosphorus and nitrogen leach off the landscape, wind up in the river.
That's really from two places. That's CAFOs, that's concentrated animal feedlot operations with thousands and thousands of chickens and pigs and cattle. And then that's fertilizer that's spread on the corn and soy fields. Rainstorm comes, it runs off, it gets into the tributaries which go into the Maumee River and then make their way into western Lake Erie.
Now, these issues are interconnected. As we've learned earlier, these algae, also known as cyanobacteria, need nutrients as well as warmer temperatures to thrive. When we look at nutrients, We already know that these farms are big sources of phosphorus as well as nitrogen. And when it comes to warmer temperatures, we know that farms release a large amount of emissions which contribute to climate change. And climate change can look like an increase in temperature and also a change in weather patterns like torrential downpour. And with more rain comes more runoff.
When it comes to restricting nutrients or trying to regulate nutrients, wetlands are very good at intercepting nutrients before they get to the lake. So they promote the growth of aquatic vegetation, which consumes the nutrients before they can cause problems in the lake. The second thing is that H2 Ohio has funded a lot of efforts monitoring the blooms so that we know how bad they are, monitoring the amount of toxins that are being produced. On top of that, H2 Ohio has an incentives program whereby it pays farmers a certain amount of money per acre if they adopt a voluntary nutrient management plan in order to restrict the use of fertilizer.
The Environmental Law and Policy Center and the Board of Commissioners of Lucas County, home to the city of Toledo, sued the U.S. EPA. They sought a cap on phosphorus entering the Maumee watershed by implementing Section 303 of the Clean Water Act, regulatory pollution control known as a Total Maximum Daily Load, or TMDL. In 2023, that lawsuit ended in a consent decree requiring the Ohio EPA to submit a plan for a TMDL to the U.S. EPA, which approved Ohio's plan in 2024.
Now, things are slowly getting better. 70% of the farmers are making changes in how they do their business. Okay, so I don't want to put this all on the farmers. A lot of farmers are actually very responsive to this, and there are farmers helping other farmers in adopting practices. The policies are way too reliant on phosphorus as opposed to phosphorus and nitrogen. I don't believe the TMDL is appropriate to deal with the problem. I think we really need a 40% reduction in dissolved reactive phosphorus and a 40% reduction in nitrogen loads. And that's not being done. But ultimately down the road, I'm thinking we're probably going to have to do some sort of regulation like a tax on fertilizer or something.
It's just such a widespread issue that I'm not sure that there is something that's going to be an overnight fix. It's going to be a lot of legislation, a lot of people getting eyes on the topic, and really trying to change how we deal with excrement, period, because there's just too many problems and not enough people to enact the change in the legislation that we really need to see.
The political pressure is the thing. I think the big thing is putting political pressure on your state representative.
Really, it comes down to cutting down our meat consumption, if not completely cutting out period, so that the demand is no longer there, and then the end result, byproduct being their excrement and their waste, then is no longer ending up in our environment, or at least to a decreased degree.
But we know what a bad lake looks like, and we do know what it takes to fix it. It's a matter of whether we have the ability to do it, and I think I'll